All right, I was told to start at 1 o'clock. Welcome. This is the construction update. I'm Shannon Richards. I'm just going to read my notes. Let's see. I own Hay Runner, which is a residential construction company. Mostly we do some commercial, but more like boutique, small stuff. I'm a licensed broker with Sotheby's. My company does real estate design and construction, and it's based out of Portland and Rockport, Maine. I'm heavily involved in the content production here at MEREDA, so you can blame me. It sucks. No, just kidding. As the chair of the conference committee, and I'm also the vice president here, MEREDA is always looking for new members and our current members to get involved actively. This is a call to action. We're a volunteer organization. Kendrick was just saying what a great job we're doing, how he wants to get more involved.
I was actually trying to figure out what my take was on a sold-out session.
Sure. All right, let's see. So MEREDA offers value, I think, and you probably already know this if you're here, because it brings together a variety of professionals. We're all working to bring responsible development to Maine and beyond. And it's nice because I believe that a diversity of opinion at times and creates variety, and that variety makes us stronger and more relevant. So that matters, and thank you all for being here. So right now is, it's 1 o'clock. This is the construction outlook. I'm moderating. I'm also part of the panel. To my left is Nick Cormier. Nick is a part of our board of directors at MEREDA. He's also at PM Construction, your BD, Business Development. Right. And then to my right, Kendrick, Ballantyne. You do something with construction, I've heard. Yes, I checked. Optimum Construction. So I'm going to kick this off. We have created a little bit of a slideshow. So this is a new format. Everybody obviously knows that because you've signed up, and when you signed up, you had to pick which panels you're going to go to. We were joking around that in years past, if you came to the Forecast Conference, if you didn't know what was being told to you, you either didn't live in Maine or you were dead. So we thought this would be an interesting way to bring new and relevant information to the stage and have an interactive panel discussion. So depending on questions, if people are interested or excited about the subject that we're talking about, feel free to ask questions, reach out. We had a feeling the more people were here, the more formal it would be, but we're also pretty casual people, so no stress. All right, construction outlook. Nick, go.
All right, thank you all for being here. We talked earlier, I think it's important, we don't want to talk at you with stats and other things. We want to talk about what's relevant and important to you with construction, and a lot of that could happen before the shovel even gets in the ground. So I think we're going to touch on some of the pre-con, if you will, and then obviously things that we deal with on a regular basis with the construction. So a few things. We do a lot of retail, moment of silence for Tika there, and then a lot of multifamily as well. Throughout Maine, a little bit into New Hampshire, but those are kind of the two primary sectors that we are working in. And as Shannon said, I'm the business development manager and kind of lead dealing with our existing clients, but also developing new opportunities in those sectors.
Right on. Thank you. Kendrick.
I'm Kendrick Ballantyne, president of Optimum Construction. So at Optimum, my primary focus is just internal development, growing our team, business development, as well as pre-construction, making business decisions, right? Our primary sectors in Maine, Maine being a tertiary market, right? We do a bit of everything, right? It's commercial construction. We have an office in Danvers, Mass. Down there, we're focused on multifamily, institutional, higher ed, and in healthcare. So, but here, that being a primary market, this being a tertiary market, we do whatever our clients would like for us to do, right? And so, we spend a lot of time building those relationships. And I think today, getting into how we can help further provide value to those relationships is an important thing. And it's getting some feedback from you, getting good questions, so on and so forth. So happy to be here, part of this panel, and thanks for a sold out outlook today here in construction.
Thank you. All right, and then this is me, Shannon Richards. These are some of our projects we've completed in the last so many years, a little bit. My office is in one of those pictures. There's some commercial and some homes. All right, market overview, pre-pandemic, 2019 to present day. Challenges. So let's go back. So let's talk about, what's up? Oh, I thought we were going to, okay, so you go ahead, talk market overview, pre-pandemic.
So when we talked initially before we were kind of planning this panel, something that stood out to me is when I was, prior to the BD role, I was project managing, and we had a project, it was a renovation in Portland, and we got pricing in, I want to say like 2019 or so, like spring 2019. Like a lot of projects, there was some financing things that needed to finalize. So we got the notice to proceed in February of 2020. And I kind of get, all right, here's the subs that we're going to try to use. I pick up the phone, write some contracts, and almost, I want to say every single one held their price. And fast forward today, like that's probably not going to happen. So I think like that was just one example of how the market has changed in that regard. Granted, we had some good subs that we've worked with in the past kind of lined up, but you can shift through that to maybe 2021 and you were getting pricing, and you guys can both touch this, where it was like, this is good for 7 days, like kind of take it or leave it. So I think you had that, and it's since changed since then, but you had kind of that pre-pandemic market to the volatility I just mentioned, to now where things have stabilized from the construction and the construction cost standpoint. There's a lot of other costs that go into construction development that we'll touch on, but I just wanted to kind of talk about how some things that were happening then that were beneficial to a project maybe aren't happening now, but again, much less volatile in that regard.
And can you just tell us all, tell me, predominantly where are you working in the state?
Yeah. So we're based in Saco, a lot of work in York, Cumberland County. I think kind of our focus, or my focus from a business development standpoint, is kind of Kittery to Augusta. We did a senior housing project in Ellsworth last year. I'm not going up to Ellsworth for coffee once a week, but if someone, like Kendrick said, like if a client or someone we know or that's interested in partnering with us reaches out, we'll cover the whole state. Some of our retail work takes us into New Hampshire. We renovated the Hannaford in Portsmouth 2 years ago. So, but again, there's a lot of opportunity in Maine. So again, to kind of that forecast piece, like it's not that doom and gloom. Like we can work in Maine along with some other competitive construction managers and still be successful with the work and the pipeline that's here.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. So, Kendrick, where are you primarily working in terms of geography?
Wherever my clients want me to go. We're doing work. We're doing work throughout the state of Maine. We got a project going on in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. We got one going on in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Currently, we're south of Boston in Hull and Weymouth. Currently, we got a project just about to break ground in Danvers, a Fidelity investment pad site, new construction. We're doing a bunch of work here in Portland. Doing a nice project for Avesta in Gray. So we're doing some stuff further up north. We got a nice condo project going on in Westbrook. So we got a lot of work all over state. Just completed a project at Bowdoin College. Got stuff going on at University of Maine Farmington and University of Southern Maine, University of Maine Augusta. We got a school project out in Bristol. So we travel all over the place, and we kind of go where the work goes and where our clients go.
Okay, so since this is the forecast conference, I want to talk a little bit about 2023, 2024 projecting forward. So Can you guys both tell us, and I'll speak to it a bit as a residential representative here, what did you see in 2023 globally, like in terms of your revenue? Was it up? Was it like painfully up? Where can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I don't know if revenue can painfully be up, but it can be challengingly up. I mean, we nearly doubled our revenue from 2022 to 2023. We did just under 50 million in 2023. We got 47 backlogged in 2024. What we're projecting for calendar year 2024. So there's stuff that's a larger number going into projects into 2025. So I think we're feeling that things are still strong, but in specifically in pre-construction, I do think that we are, things are slowing down, are certainly slowing down a bit from the fast and furious pace of 2023, and we all know why, right? The rates are high, and I think we're all projecting that they're going to drop, and that's what everybody's hearing. And I think that's some of what you folks are here to listen to and hear about today is like what we're seeing, what we're hearing. Because I'll tell you who sees it first is are a lot of the design professionals, right? The architects, the civil engineers usually are the first group that are involved because they're the ones running planning board meetings, right, for clients. So yeah.
Yep, great. What about you?
Yeah, I think, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in terms of like bringing in, so basically when you break ground on a project, I mean, give or take 40% of the work has kind of already been done with the planning, design, permitting. So I think if you can bring someone in sooner in that process before the shovel goes in the ground, I think that helps. Historically, you're going to save more money doing that. And I think in 2023, we had a couple projects like that with some long-standing clients, and we were able to be really efficient with those projects and be successful. I think going into 2024, there's a lot of, I want to call it variability with things. We have some things that we've been awarded that are in the pipeline, but you don't know like some of the next steps and some of the things that are kind of out of our control. We're going to help and do what we can to move it along, but I think, again, there's a lot of energy and focus into moving some projects forward, particularly with main housing projects. Obviously, there's funding for that, but it's just a matter of kind of lining everything up. Someone had told me a few years back, like development is like trying to put frogs in a line and say there's like 5 of them, one jumps, you pull it back. Like it's almost like now there's like 10 frogs. And I think if you have a client you've worked with, you have an architect you've worked with, like get to know your frogs, I guess. So I think if you can kind of partner with people, it's not going to make it easy, but you can be a lot more efficient.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so you jumped ahead a little bit. We're still talking about looking back, looking forward. So I'm going to speak to, because I'm a little bit, like I said, smaller projects, and I started Hayrunner in 2019 because I thought that we needed a company that would address small projects. Because the big projects, it's like where you kind of graduate to it, but I mean, my house needed small projects, and I was like, everybody needs this. So I started in 2019, Q4, and just going to talk about inquiries. In 2020, I had 382 inquiries for work. And then in 2021, I had 461 inquiries. In 2022, I had 403, so roughly the same. Last year, 2023, I had 735 inquiries for work. So many of those were small projects. Year to date today, 87, so tracking about normal, or based on last year's numbers. So just if anybody here is interested in like what was going on, what do we see happening? I mean, big construction is a big indicator for, as we heard from James Marple, predictive. They go slower, they start up slower, they get into production slower, but these two gentlemen are telling us that we have strong pipelines. We can talk a little bit more about that. So I'm going to get into the next slide here, so because we kind of jumped into it. So challenges, if we were going to talk about challenges to construction, what Nick was trying to start getting into is that, the less information you have, the more you're challenged, right? And so I think when you know that your pricing is largely dependent on a good plan, you're going to spend a little more time on that plan. And so one of the things we wanted to talk about is how you can do that a little better. So why don't you take a second?
All right. I think one of the things that I know that we talk about a lot at Optimum and try to do a really good job of of educating our clients is talking about project life cycle, not just project duration, right? So when you get an approved project, there is a long life cycle to that project, right? It's not just the construction timeline. There's this whole process that happens before, right? And you design. How long does that take? Who's holding? Are you holding the design professionals, the MEP consultants? Are you holding them accountable? Do you have an owner's rep holding them accountable? And our suggestion is bring us in as a part of that team early on as construction managers, right? We're happy to provide a very transparent process on costs and overhead and profit, our Div 1 general requirements, general conditions, admin requirements, what you're getting on your project, and then talking through options through pre-construction and through design, working together as a team. And I think that's one of the challenges we often see, right, is that we inherit these designs at times that are uninformed from in the practical world, ground level, where the swings of pricing, swings in lead times, manufacturer challenges, and I think that getting brought into processes early and often is very, very much helps solve a lot of the challenges that we're currently seeing.
Great. And you want to?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. In a perfect world, you're awarded a project, you're looped in as the CM, you've got 50% set of plans, and so the drawings are halfway done. At that point, like in a perfect world, when you get to 100, if you're partnering up with them, going through some VE options, like your budget is hopefully going to go down. Or at least stay where you had it initially. So I think, again, that's the goal. When you get to some of these bidding or it's the low price, like you get into some dynamics that can kind of be a detriment to that process and the project. But like Kendrick said, like everyone's kind of holding everyone else accountable between the architect, the engineer, the CM, and the owner's rep. So I think that's definitely a big piece of it.
Okay, let's see what we have next, since we haven't looked at this since we made it a month ago. Okay, so what's happening today? I want to give everybody a little bit of insight into what we see in our pipeline. And I'll talk again, residential, coast to Maine. Let's see, as of 2023, we closed out at 13.5 million. In 2022, we did 3.4 million. In 2021, we did 1.7. So I started in 2020, did just over 500,600, and have more than doubled every year. There's a real call for residential construction here, no doubt about it. February year to date, this year I've done roughly $1 million per month. I'm at $2 million. With a projection of 25% growth, I plan to be around 17 million at the end of the year.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, we got a few things in the pipeline for this year. It's just a matter of kind of getting everything lined up in terms of the financing, the permitting to get that notice to proceed and actually start. I mean, are we touching on challenges? Is that a relevant time
I think
to do that?
That says what's happening today.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we already went by it.
Well, yeah, the last one was
Okay.
challenges.
Okay, so no, you can click back to where we were. But.
All right.
So I think the biggest, this isn't any surprise to anybody here, like labor and financing are the two biggest challenges. And labor, as we saw earlier, it's not just construction. And the financing and the soft costs, like those weren't as high a few years ago. The construction costs have stayed somewhat stable, but then when the soft costs are also increasing, that's when you run into some of those issues. But with labor, and Kendrick and I were talking, it's a supply and demand. I mean, Federal Street can't get built with just any old plumber off the street corner. So you've got plumbers that are either already working or they've got projects lined up. And so it's like, well, there's 2 plumbers that can do this 7-story condo that we're building. And so that just limits your budget. I mean, if you're able to get like 4, 5, 6 numbers from subs, it really helps. But right now we're seeing things where, well, we got these 2 projects that are going to start say it's a drywall subcontractor, I can give you a price. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. So there's a little bit of a holding pattern. I think Q2, Q3, well, I can talk about that later.
Yeah, those tend to be the best in construction, Q2, Q3, just in case anybody's interested.
And I'll just quickly add, I mean, it just to kind of co-sign a little bit what Nick said is, it's simple. It's supply and demand, and you just have a lack of supply. And when I say supply, I'm not talking about materials. The stabilization of materials, we're there, right? The material costs have stabilized. That's not our problem. Our problem, it's not necessarily construction managers either. Right? It is the subcontractor labor force. So that very specifically the subcontractor labor force. And
is that true down in Philly or wherever?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true everywhere. You get into these union occupied areas and you see a bit less of it. But those are projects, right? But those are projects that are like $40 million, $50 million and way over, right? We're talking hundreds of thousands, 500,000-600,000 square foot buildings, right? So, but I think in these like middle markets, right, in small markets, it is that I think there's a period of time, the people that are my age, 40, that there aren't people that are that age that are in the trades. I think you have young people, right? You have young people that are getting back into the trades, which is really good. But then you have a trades group that has experience most of them are over 50 and kind of getting done. And so you have this lack of experience in the trades that I think causing a lot of these. When you hear supply and demand, it's obviously of the demand for building, like our country, like our world, weird, like it continues to grow every year, right? Since the beginning of time, right? There's going to be more people. Guess what we need? More housing for those people. So the demand continues to be here specifically for housing, but all types of construction. But it's just the there's a gap in the labor force, qualified labor force that is causing our problems today.
Yeah, and I think everybody in this room probably knows it because everybody here has a house and needs somebody to work on it, and it's hard to find them. So 2024 and beyond, if you were to look out, are you like positive looking out a year in the future, beyond? Where's your head at?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still still a lot of question, right? We have a election. Is it an election?
I mean, I think
election
so.
year.
Something's
Yeah. So I think I think the reality is that those candidates are going to push. We're going to get a rate drop. But then the question is like, do people pull the trigger when that rate drop happens? Because there's a good chance right after the election those rates go back up. Like, my question is, and when I think a lot about and do a lot of research on looking at futures markets, how those, as it pertains to steel and lumber, and what do those markets look like? What are people projecting out there? But there's a big unknown of what happens to the rates beyond 2024. I think you're gonna hit a period where they will continue to drop, and I'm personally a little bit bullish on. I think that depending on what happens with the election, hopefully they stabilize around that 5.5, right, and we get back to kind of that pre-pandemic just easy kind of roll with financing and rates. Like, you weren't getting the deals you were during the pandemic, right, on financing, but that it stabilizes and we don't have these big swings in rates, and the developers and investors out there can have some comfort in not the volatility of rates and the cost of money, because guess what it takes to build buildings? Money.
Well, luckily there are people here from the state of Maine. I think supporting programs will help us finance buildings.
I just want to touch back on what Kendrick had mentioned with the labor. I think there's challenges. That's one of them. I think we're all successful because labor is an issue. Like, we don't just throw our hands up. Like, let's think of like how we can be productive and figure this out. I mean, we talk about long lead items, which aren't as much of an issue, but at the same time, I think we're ordering windows like 2 weeks into the project, whereas before, like, you just kind of got to it when you got to it. So now I think being more proactive, finding different ways regarding labor or other things, and I think, again, that's why we're successful and why we're continuing to move forward on project, because you can just say, oh, well, everything takes longer, and just kind of, oh, well, like that's not, I mean, it's important to understand the market and what your expectations need to be, but you've got to kind of move forward and find some ways to be successful. But regarding 2024, like I said, I think Q2, Q3, some things are going to come together, and there's going to be some good momentum, which will ultimately kind of free up some subcontractors, and their pipeline will be a little more steady and consistent. Obviously, the rates will help. I think at the end of the day, if you're moving forward with a project or thinking about moving forward, like, the more you do now is going to pay off in the long run, as opposed to kind of picking up the phone in November and calling one of us and say, yeah, I want to do something like early spring. It's like, that's unrealistic. Like, start now, start to kind of put some pieces in place. Obviously, don't overextend yourself with expenses if you don't have to. But again, if you loop someone in, we can kind of target where those need to be, and it give you a conceptual budget and say, like, okay, this makes sense. Like, we're going to get another set of plans and move forward on the design because we think it makes sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. In terms of residential, I don't see any changes in the marketplace. We have a growing population. Well, there's people moving here, more than not, but we do have some people, passing on. I think there's an aging housing stock, which we need to figure out how to improve for people who live in it today, the way we live today, which that's a really huge difficulty because of the, rural communities, multi-level homes with stairwells and bathrooms on second floors and those types of things. We need to figure out a way to address some of those housing shortfalls. Multifamily housing in an urban environment isn't great for everybody who's trying to downsize or aging out of their home. So working closely with policymakers, I think, and like Avesta is working on some of these things. So we'll be talking about that at the development panel discussion in a couple hours, if you stick around. So I see 2024 and beyond. I think the state of Maine, I'm bullish on Maine. I think Maine's awesome. I love it here. I've lived here my whole life. I have kids here, and our job is to make this place a little better and stick around, maybe go out for a bit and come back. And I think that being in construction it pays in ways that are not always fiscal. Like, not everybody in construction is here because we're raking in the dough. We're here because we actually like making things. We want to leave a mark. We want to improve our communities. And, being a part of something where you can walk away from it at the end of the day and look at it and say, oh, I made that. Like, that's something that's very special and important, and I don't think we talk about that enough. So let's see what's next. Okay, great. Again, we wanted this to be interactive, and we're trying something new. We wanted to see if anybody had any questions. I know there's a lot of people here, and if you're not comfortable speaking, great.
So we heard the gentleman earlier at the opening talk about 3D printing in the universities. And I just wondered if there are any emerging technologies that help with kind of the supply side, or that supply demand. What do you guys see as the technologies that are going to help to kind of increase either quality or quantity that you guys
AI.
It's an excellent question, Rob. I think we're still a little ways from seeing that impact. Honestly, I think it's a built world, right? So in manufacturing, that's one thing, right? But you have human beings that are building things, and we're a long way from a robot building anything. There's so many variables. There's so many decisions to make. I mean, you get these projects where you picture this. You literally have 43 subcontractors in a building at the same time, and it's our jobs to in any moment make split-second decisions all day long on what somebody should or should not do, what is safe, what is not safe, what is the proper sequencing, what is not the proper sequencing, right? We talk about in the term clash detection between MEPs and structural, right? And you have in-field people making those decisions. Those decisions will never be able to be made by a robot. It will never happen.
Or you may not want to live in a place that has it done by a robot.
Thank you. But from a manufacturing standpoint, we'll see, right? I think I think that the technology it's coming along, but I'm very much looking forward to how that does impact things, and will it impact manufacturing lead times, maybe manufacturing costs? That would be great as well. So yeah, that's my take on it. I don't know if anybody else has anything different.
Yeah, I think, like Shannon said, the AI, I think that's going to take time. That's going to really take buy-in from the subcontractors. Like if you've got a framing sub that's using a robot to mark out their interior walls, okay, like that, if they bring that to the table, I don't think we're going to shut it down. But I think regarding the keynote, I think modular, so we're pricing a hotel in Southern Maine, modular construction. So it would get constructed in a factory in Canada. Kind of conditions are perfect, everything's there, and then it gets shipped to that location. I think, the cost at this point for that is still higher, but you're going to save potentially on some things where you have to go back and address, and it's going to shorten the schedule. And I think, I was talking to some people about this, like solar, when you had solar panels on your house 10, 20 years ago, that was only a select few could even afford that. Now it's a lot more reasonable. I think that might happen, and this is way out forecasting, but that might become more affordable if it becomes more commonplace. And again, if it's more affordable, it's going to be quicker. So I think it's just a matter of what comes from the factory, what does the construction manager do to finalize it, kind of that gray area, getting that worked out, which is very easy to do. So again, that's kind of, to answer your question in a long-winded way, I think that's something, but along with, what was discussed in the keynote, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think people's focus are on that to some extent.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this too, though. From a design standpoint, I'm working with a client who I've built maybe 5 houses for in my life, and he's become a dear friend. And for the first time, I have one of my staff members dedicated to designing in 3D a home for him, and I get nauseous when it's like a video game, because I'm sitting there in meetings and he's taking us through the house and he's flipping it around, and we all kind of have to look away. But I've built enough houses with this guy to know him, and he loves to be able to get into the details and the weeds and understand how an eave and rake and siding and window and frame are all going to come together, and painfully. And it's an amazing new world to be able to do this with him, and he is absolutely so happy to pay for it, because he gets to have this this direct involvement in a way that I never would have even seen coming down the pike. So I think that's cool. I think being able to speak to what you just made a really good point. Solar, back in the old days, solar was something you did because it was almost like a badge, or you were you're making a statement, because it didn't really ever fiscally make sense. Even with the rebates. But the more we do those types of things, the more affordable they become, the better then the technology improves. And so I think a little bit at a time, if we just keep doing what we know we should be doing, which is what Dr. Dagger talked about, converting to wind power, electric. I'm building houses in Down East where it's common practice to use closed foam insulation still in new construction. That doesn't make sense to me from an environmental standpoint, even if you have good R values. So there's still a lot of things happening out there that we, even close to home, we need to work on.
Yeah, and I think, to Kendrick's point, some things technology isn't going to address. This is kind of jumping off topic a little bit, but the 10 NIMBYs that are shutting down a development, and you name the municipality, unless you can get some technology to make them disappear, that's another challenge that is just a human interaction piece. And I think, again, to that, I talk to engineers all the time, and they're like, yeah, we got another planning board meeting. We got another plan, and it's 10 people that don't want to see the development happen. And I'm pro-development based on my industry, but everything has a different story. But I think it's hard to see, there's so many people that want development to happen in whatever town they're in or city, and they just kind of assume it's going to happen. So that's a conversation for another day. But I think MEREDA is really at the forefront of helping municipalities and developers and projects kind of make sure that they get support behind them?
Real quick on just on that, and this is because I have to say it's just people need places to live. They have to live someplace, right? There's more people, so they have to live someplace. So so there is a need, and the state of Maine has voiced that need, and it's the municipalities that are getting challenged by the NIMBYs. For you, it's an acronym, not in my backyard, right? And there are other states, Massachusetts being one of them. Go look at the Chapter 40B application, right? And if you have local constituents, point them to that Chapter 40B application. And it's an application that goes to the state that basically helps support a developer to build both market rate housing and affordable housing. They have to build a mix. But the state has to step in at some point in time and impact the municipality's ability to be able to shoot down projects that meet zoning requirements, right? That is a big problem that we are currently seeing in this environment.
Actually, Elizabeth Fraser, who was, I think you may have missed the first half of the.
Come on, why are you going to call me out like that? I'm
I'm
actually working.
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually volunteering. Elizabeth was, she's working on something up at the state, and I think we did just have some bad news about that, but it's with regards to, it's the 772 maybe? Yeah. Yeah, so basically you could see a developer spend quite a bit of money trying to get some housing approved in a zone that it should be, just from a planning standpoint, and then see it voted down, or they change the rules after it gets approved. Yeah.
Yeah, by referendum.
Right.
Right. You just got to get 3,000 signatures.
Right.
It's not that challenging. It's like, come on, that shouldn't be the barrier of entry. You just.
All right. Next question.
Yeah, kind of on the subject of what you guys were just talking about and the labor subject, I think it's clear that the state, we've heard these figures being 80,000 new homes today, right? They don't even include sort of what's coming and what, more homes we're going to need, and with rooftops is going to come other construction uses, office and retail and whatnot. Is there anything that your industry is doing or at the state level to help grow that labor force or house them? It's a bit of a chicken and the egg, right? People want to come here if they can't afford to live here, so we can't grow the workforce. But is anything happening sort of at the industry level to build worker cooperatives or something to, attract that workforce and build that here? And
I would love to build workforce housing, but all my workers are building houses for other people, and it's very expensive to build houses. So for a workforce who they're getting paid to build it is really hard. If we could get some policy in place, if we could get some support, I think the offices are seeing maybe challenges because people are working from home, maybe we turn offices into housing, short term maybe.
I can speak to that, and I think we're down in the Massachusetts market. I think you get a lot of these, and we're seeing it right now because we're having conversations about it. Yeah, and this is just outside of Boston, and it's not, and it's because obviously you have a much larger office space vacancy in Boston than you do in Portland, right? But you do have office buildings you get outside of Portland that are vacant. As long as these offices, the architects are really getting to a really good spot where these developers are starting to get bullish on office to residential conversion, as long as they are 80 feet or 82 feet and skinnier, right? They can't be too skinny, right? Like a lot of hotels, they don't work for residential conversions because they're too skinny, right? They get 24 feet. But you get these office buildings that, ideally you're in the 40-foot range for a typical multifamily, 42, 46 feet from a width standpoint, because you have a corridor running down the middle of a building, right? And so, but these office conversions, you developers out there that are looking in that, anything in that 82 and under range. Now, you obviously you got to be diligent about where your chase runs are. You have concrete on deck, right? And how are you gonna core through that? You got a lot of plumbing and residential that is not in office So there's those types of things to be aware of, but it's something I think that you could get bullish on here too, as long as office building prices continue to drop and they continue to lose value, which I believe they absolutely will.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for that.
Yeah, back to that question again. I think workforce housing, no matter what your job is, and labor, no matter what your company is, are issues. But specific to construction, I know AGC is doing a lot to loop in, and it could be. I mean, we talk about like trade schools, high schools, community colleges, but it's any. I mean, there's no age cap on when you can be an effective member of a trade. So again, AGC with funding from the state, and I know other higher ed schools are doing some things as well. So it's definitely. I mean, we're not successful if the subcontract. Again, it goes back to that. Okay, there's only 2 plumbers that can do a building over 8 floors. Like, that just puts a cap on construction in general. So I think the more the trades are able to grow their labor force, and I think people's attention is they're on it in housing in general because we all need a place to live, but construction and its related sectors are on the trade labor. So it's not going to happen overnight, and I know it's like nothing new, but I appreciate the question, and I think people are kind of looking to help it.
Yeah, I would say the programs are there. They're there. Right. We just now the people that are being trained just need to catch up, right? So they've been implemented. They are there, which is a really good thing. It's just that those folks coming out of those programs aren't the ones that you want. You know, they're the helper, right? They're the second. They're not the one that's running a project yet. So
or at least you don't want to be offering warranty on their work.
Yeah. I mean,
with the projects and the housing and the deficit that we have. I mean, we built the Latitude project in South Portland. It was 4 buildings, 250 units, but that took almost 24 months. So it's like you got to build a lot of those a lot quicker. And I think for a handful of reasons, particularly in Maine, it just other things need to change to make that housing stock increase quicker. And that's maybe for another discussion, but just to kind of put it in perspective. Again, it's numbers that we all can kind of try to wrap our heads around between the housing and the labor. But again, this is why we're kind of here doing this to make it more of an everyday discussion.
Anybody else? Questions? Go ahead.
So the question as far as what you guys are seeing out there, are you seeing more and more plans come across that are done in Revit or 3D, 4D modeling to be able to eliminate some of the conflicts that you've spoken about? And the other side of it is, based on the construction you're seeing, how much more of it is going beyond what the International Energy Code requires? Because we know that one of the things of lowering issues with electricity and heating is lowering that footprint, carbon footprint. So how much of that are you seeing actually occurring versus everyone's just talking?
And how much starts with it and how much gets VE'd out?
Yeah, so I'll start with the Revit and 3D question. The answer to that is no. And I think right now we're in a tough financial environment, and that stuff costs more money. It's great and it's awesome, and I wish the answer was yes, but the answer is no. I'm not seeing more of it necessarily because it costs more money. And currently, owners, developers, are just trying to pencil deals to make them work, right? And so I think that. Maybe there is a time when a time comes that it's more those types of designs and are more financially viable, or the projects are larger to where they're absolutely necessary. But to answer that question directly, I'm not necessarily seeing more that are coming, or more Revit 3D or specifically 3D designs that are coming through.
And
yeah, same on this end.
So in residential, my partner Caleb Johnson, who's an architect, he made this metaphor a long time ago, and he said design is like race cars, and you have to have somebody has to be designing that very fancy, fast race car, but only one person gets to drive it, and then the rest of us are driving Fords. So Yeah, so it's true. So I get to use 3D models in residential. You got one-offs. You got somebody who I've worked with 5 times who's willing to spend twice as much as he set out to spend because he just wants what he wants. I see that kind of stuff. But when you're talking like, you're absolutely right. When I'm working with developers, no. You are like lucky if you have 4 lines in a box.
We did just complete the Center of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at Bowdoin College. That's an institutional client, right? Way above and beyond energy code, right? I mean, we're talking, carbon neutral by 2040, so it's all electric, right? So it all depends. It's all that to answer that question. It's all client specific.
And that's a wrap.
Blah 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 blah.
And all right, hold on. So thank you everybody for coming. Nick, Kendrick, Shannon, we're all grateful to have you. I'm supposed to let you all know. Now, I heard people clapping next door a lot. Can you guys just clap really, really loud? Some screaming.
Hey, hey.
You! All right. Thank you. I heard it like 5 times. I'm like, what is going on next door? All right. So I got to tell you guys. So I'm going to be back here next, 2 o'clock, with Financial Trends. Kim Twitchell, Matt Early, and David Hewlett. Next door in A, that way, is Craig Young's interviewing Peter Harrington and Matt Aarons. And Josh Soley over there is going to be interviewing David Packard and Marika Thorman. Thanks.